thank you for clicking on the video. This is Trolling Wise Minds. I'm Kanishk. Today we have a very special guest for our episode 6. And thank you for giving so much love to the previous episode. It's nice. So today we have Mr. Prince Rachit Sinha. He's a SDE2 at Amazon. And there's something unique about his journey. That's why I brought him in the channel, because we are a channel of uniqueness, not the generic IT help support channel. So I brought him because he had a very distinctive and idiosyncratic journey. He didn't directly join Amazon right after college, or maybe as an intern or an on-campus placement. That is the generic way to go to Amazon. He worked for a couple of companies and worked his way around and landed in Amazon as an SDE2. So I guess that helped. And rest we'll ask from him. Hello sir. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey Kanishk, lovely meeting you, and thanks
hello.
for having me on your channel.
So same.
Great to be here.
Great to say. Really, yours to talk about like that. So I want to start with the thing. Your journey. How did you end up in Amazon? There might be a lot of things people like to hear about what to do, how to code. That's something people know, but they know what they have to do, but they actually don't know what is the very ideal and not the ideal, a very real implication of it. So I want you to take us through that journey. How was things, and how were you in college, or how were you coding when you realized you should code? That's the thing I want to ask you. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So just a quick intro about myself. I graduated from Sharda University in 2017. I was a student in BTech, Computer Science. Since 2017 till 2020, I'm here in Bangalore. I've worked for a few software companies. And right now, as you introduced me, I work for Amazon. So my journey, I think it's very interesting. It's interesting because I don't think a lot of people really think that if you come from a tier 3 college, you will ever make to any of the FAANG companies. How it started for me was I got into Sharda by luck. It wasn't something I planned. Just like any other student, I wanted to get into a better college. But what I got was Sharda. Yeah, so I got admitted in Sharda. I started studying there. I think within a few months, I realized that the quality of students at Sharda, just like any tier 3 university, was not really very good. I mean, I wanted to do something exceptional. We all have this dream, right? When you are in 12th standard, you'll go to college, you'll rock the college, you'll make great friends, you'll do all the techie stuff. But soon I realized that's not how it works. But I knew that I had to focus. Unlike most of the people who came to this university for degree or just for the symbol, status symbol, I was here to study. So I have always been a good student. I always scored good marks. So academic excellence was my primary focus. To be honest, when you are in first semester, you don't really know. All you know is there are few companies like Google, Facebook, TCS, and Tech Mahindra. And to get into that, you have to learn coding. That's all you know, frankly speaking.
Of course.
And nobody really knows C of coding at that point in time. Right? Only few folks who have learned a bit Python or C++ in school, they knew a bit about it. So the first 2 semesters, I was not much into coding. In fact, I did not really have a laptop with me for the first 2 semesters.
Oh.
Gradually, I realized, okay, I have coded in the past in my school. I like doing it. I should do it. So, although the major computer science subjects come to you in the 3rd semester or in the 2nd year, but still there is the introduction to C in your 1st semester, 2nd semester. So yeah, I started coding in C.
I guess that's where the problem starts a bit, because you said na core subjects come in the 3rd semester, but the core subjects are operating system, architecture, and when you eventually get the interviews, and although there's DSA, but the level of DSA taught in college, like okay, this normal binary tree, and they'll teach you the normal stuff, they'll get away with it. They'll not teach you in depth, or maybe they'll go with GATE. That's a completely different approach. They'll not go with what FAANG companies ask these days, according to my experience. So, and what I've researched about it. So, how do you, like when you started this, you definitely found websites and all, but how could you manage academic excellence, that is preparing for hardcore CS, like theoretical and that academic level approach? And this is more of a I don't know, like it's a comparative approach towards DSA, because it's solving questions and it's a completely different ball game. And these two things, academic excellence in college, usually are measured in CGPA, and this DSA approach is usually measured in ratings and different. There are a lot of things, like CodeChef has ratings, and you have like candidate master in Codeforces. How do you manage both of these things, and how do you say a person is academically excellent in college and in computer science? Over to you.
Yeah, so as you said, the metrics that we utilize for figuring out if you are good at academics or good at coding, they are totally different. In fact, academics, competitive coding, and the actual work you do in companies, they are so different that you just can't imagine. You can see a number of students who are really good at competitive programming, but when it comes to doing actual work, delivering something, they suck at it. And the reason is pretty clear, because they have all their focus on optimizing solutions, getting output, they are learning about algorithms, but that's not actually what is required when you actually work for a company. Those are just the filters that you have to clear. But when you appear for any interview, you just have to appear for the coding sessions, you have to clear questions like these, but these are not really utilized. Now, the question is, can somebody really excel in academia and on the same hand also keep up with the competitive programming or the new technologies? Theoretically, yes, there are people who do this, but if you are smart enough, you won't really do that, because you have a choice. You have X amount of hours that you could put, that you could spend your effort in. It's up to you. Do you want to spend all of it in academia, or do you want to split it half and half? It depends on you.
Okay.
For me, academia was something I was really passionate about. So I really love to study. I really love to excel in exams. I really love to score the highest marks in the university. So I had a very good streak of scoring more than 9.6, 9.7 CGPA throughout my semesters. And there was a trade-off, which I did. I'm not super happy about it, what I did. But yes, there was a trade-off. I decided to, give a little more edge on academia, less on the extra stuff that I should have been learning.
Sure.
But eventually it worked out.
But
if you ask me today what you should be doing, I'll say just maintain a CGPA of 8.5 or 8 and focus on the rest of the stuff. Because academia, it's okay, unless you want to go for masters or you want to get into research or something, your grades doesn't really matter.
Okay, so as you said, like academia matters to up to a certain extent, right? And also the actual work which is being done in the fan companies or companies in general is mostly development stuff. It's based on AI, ML. These are two variations to it. First is there are a lot of YouTubers, like American YouTubers, basically made a certain kind of videos because the title was ki the fan interviews are broken. Broken means they don't judge people on what they should be judging on. If I make sense. The second thing is, people do realize this thing, they're not doing things like that which are actually done in the companies, and coding interviews don't make any sense as per se. People realize this in second year of, I'll say, misled about the fact. So they directly jump into AI ML without actually covering the basics. So how does this harms or I don't know, it gives an advantage to anybody, gives an edge over anybody? How does these two variations help? And you've been an expert and experienced one. You could guide us through that. Over to you.
Yeah, so first of all, that statement that FANG interviews are broken, I could not disagree more. I mean, that's just something, something just on top of your head, you just make a statement that interviews are broken. They are not broken. See, when you talk about interviews and number of people getting converted, the performance of the candidate, you can't apply the general practice that you sit with an interviewee and give him a live project to work on and he will be successful. It's not possible. The interview might be working on C++ and all of the project stack that you have is in Java or Golang or React.js or something. It's just not possible. There has to be a criteria for which you don't really need to know a technology, although there are technology specific interviews. But if you want to filter out, if you want to know if the candidate is smart enough, if they can pick up stuff on the fly, if they can code it well, you have to take interviews in these formats. You have to ask them data structures and algorithms. You can't ask them to develop a website. That's just nonsense. So, see, different people have different opinions. I totally disagree. They are not broken. Most
Yeah,
of the 5 interviews are really good, and they
of
do
course,
make
of course.
sense.
That's a different discussion. But the second perspective which I discussed was key people actually jump into that. People don't do DSA and jump into that directly because in any college currently in India, we find people of two kinds, the three kinds basically, who are into academia and planning for masters. The second is doing DSA competitive blindly, doing minor projects. The third kind is completely dedicated to AI, ML, cybersecurity, and cloud computing. How does that help? And if it helps, how? If it doesn't help, how does it harm you? On the other hand, so despite a lot of hard work. So please, could you guide us to that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and very good question, and I think that's a question that every student should be asking. I have seen this in the past for my junior batches, especially when this new specialization in cloud was introduced by IBM, and I think there were a few other companies. Apple also introduced something. There were a few Android courses. So see, this is the thing that you should understand. What are your aspirations? What do you want to be? Do you want to be a coder? Do you want to do hardcore critical coding where you want to work on cutting edge technologies? You want to optimize databases? What do you want to do? If your answer is no, I'm not very much interested in coding. I'm not good at coding. I don't enjoy coding. I want to do something different. Then maybe yes, you should go for design. But if you say you want to be a developer and you don't really understand the fundamentals of computer science, you don't understand data structure and algorithm, you don't understand what is complexity of an algorithm, I would say this straight, you are wasting your time if you are spending all your effort trying to learn machine learning or artificial intelligence or something in the cloud which is related to coding. So it is stupid in a way. Some people might get offended, but it is. See, let's say you can spend 4 hours a day doing something other than academia. So you're spending these 4 hours trying to go through the documentation and courses, most of which are theoretical, by the way. They don't have any content that is going to be useful when you start actually working. And then you want to be an artificial intelligence engineer. You can't become an AI or ML engineer by taking a course, going through it, solving some theoretical questions, and memorizing what each term means. It's useless. You should stop doing that.
That's a great opinion because I guess this whole game works on fascination. Because when I was in class 9 to 10, they were like people making good level projects in exhibitions and all, and people who were doing like IIT preparation. I mean, they were not considered cool people. Cool people were considered making projects and going to NCSC and going to like clearing out big hackathons in 11th. So we found those people cool, and this exact same thing replicates in the BTech scene. But here's the thing is quite more fascinating. So there's more appealing to it. So I guess that what it leads to. But so now this is all opinion and discussion and what we feel about the thing. Not we discuss about the elephant in the room is what if companies don't come to your campus only? Companies are not coming to your campus. In IIT, GTU, and all the like great colleges, it's a completely different ballgame. People do prepare for like 1 year or 6 months. Companies come, they get recruited. But in our college, or maybe on all the low tier colleges, companies there's no concept of placement. So how do you approach a company? How do you approach and how do you get like surety? Like okay, I will get a job, and what is the required skill set for that? You're not just applying for that. What is the required skill set for that, and how much do you prepare for that? We'll divide into the fragments, but this is the overall discussion I've been looking forward to.
Okay, yeah, that's a very well question. So one of the things I want to make very clear, which is in my opinion, and I think this should be a fact that should be accepted. A university or college should not be liable for your placement. That's not the job of a university. All they are liable is to deliver the course material, help you learn, help you study, help you make network. And when you go through that process, you should become skilled enough that you can get a job. Most of the universities invite companies to their campuses is because in India, people do engineering because they want to get a job. That's the only reason. There are countless universities spread across the globe where they don't really invite companies. Companies say they want to come. If they want to come, they are okay. Okay, you can come, you can recruit students from my college, but they are very good universities where to get entrance is very difficult, and they don't invite any companies. That's the one point. But since we live in India and a lot of students want to get placement from the campus, uh, it's a fact that most of tier 3 colleges won't see face of good companies. When I say good companies, I mean in terms of package, in terms of money they are offering. If you look at the number of universities and colleges that we have in India, you'll see a lot of them are concentrated in Bengal, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and UP. So these are the hotspots where you have a lot of universities and colleges. And when you look at the quality is not good. They don't even have infrastructure to invite for placements. Forget about inviting good companies. Now, students do struggle. They don't get companies coming and recruiting. One way to solve this is look around yourself. What are students in different universities doing in order to get placement? It's hardly a one internet search away. You'll find a lot of resources that you could utilize, a lot of things you can do to get placed.
Some of the things that plug in some of them, these resources.
So let me start with what universities and colleges have started doing nowadays. What they do is they make every student take this hiring test. For example, AMCAT, CoCubes, or eLitmus. Now, what these companies do is, CoCubes, what they do is, once you clear their bar, they'll talk to different companies which are recruiting, and they'll say that I have n number of students who are good in aptitude, who are good in communication, and I can get you those students for interview. Now they have a contract. Now your university has a contract with CoCube. CoCube has contract with several companies. Now, what this means is you get a lot of opportunities through these tests. So getting a chance for an interview in a company should not be difficult at this point in time, especially. If it is difficult for your university, maybe you are not in Sharda, maybe you are in a different college where you don't have these tests. You can still go ahead, you can pay for these tests, you can take the test, and you can appear for interviews. You don't have to go through colleges in order to take these tests. And once you take this test, you just open up their portal. You'll have several job listings for dozens of companies which are recruiting. All you need to do is you have to go there and you have to appear for the interview. It's as simple as that.
Sure, sir. But there's a notion in Sharda or maybe any engineering college across the globe or across the nation, just like to get into FANG. This is a term now. You get into FANG. Like I know companies like Postman, Gojek, they play far more than FANG. But this is the thing, I want to go to FANG. That's it. So, and FANG does not hire through these eLitmus, AMCAT, and maybe there's a very good companies hire through this examination, but FANG doesn't, I guess. So how to, like, it's always been this way in India, because earlier this was IIT, then it's IIM, or maybe now it's FANG. It's always a brand and people get to know about it and they want to get in that brand. They don't care about the, like they want to do development, but FANG doesn't, so a particular company doesn't focus on development. They want still want to get into that because it's FANG. So I don't know how to face through that, and these resources, how do you manage through that? That's the messed up question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how many of your audience really know the full form of FANG.
Okay, FANG is Facebook, Amazon, I guess Apple, Netflix, and Google, right? So that's the full form of FANG.
Yep.
And we don't have much audience per se.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be watching this video because coming from a tier 3 college and aspiring to be in a good company with a good salary, that is something everybody wants to achieve. Sure. So don't worry about viewers. Okay, so most of the times in India, especially when you talk about FANG, you would be talking majorly about 3 companies. And one of them is not in FANG. The first is Amazon,
Microsoft.
The second is Google, and the third is Microsoft. See, Facebook doesn't recruit much in India. In fact, if you look at the number of people they have hired recently, almost all hiring was for the London office.
Facebook London, yeah.
Netflix doesn't hire junior engineers. They either hire interns or they hire senior engineers and above. Okay. They don't hire junior and associate engineers.
It's GAM.
Again, Apple also hires, but I'm not sure. if you look at the pay scale, Apple, I won't consider Apple to
Apple
be
is a bit. Apple and Goldman Sachs and fintech companies are a bit biased towards colleges, I guess, because in India, not in all the nations, in India, because there's a lot of competition to get into Apple, and they only take interviews of like 100, 200 people. That's it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look at the pay scale they have, Apple, I would say, is somewhere close to Microsoft. So it's not top player with the
TLP,
research I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that CTC is the biggest scam you will ever hear. That 40 LPA CTC, it's very annoying thing when I hear this.
Yeah, since we have came to this fact, I want like you did like once for like a couple of minutes to give to this, because people have this weird notion to like divide 40 by 12. That's it. I'll be a millionaire. I don't know. Just please explain what the CTC works like. What is the reality of a CTC?
Yeah. This is something everybody should be aware of. A lot of new graduates, they just divide it by 12 and they expect they'll be getting something like 1 lakh per month in their bank accounts, and what they get is 70,000 or 60,000. So CTC means cost to company. When a company offers you CTC, especially when you are fresher or even when you have experience, in CTC, there is a duration. So they might say, I'll give you a CTC of 40 lakh. Now, how this 40 lakh is going, they are going to give it to you. There is going to be breakdown. They'll say, I'll give you 40 lakhs, but the base per year is going to be 20 lakhs. So that's the base you are going to get. That is something you are going to get in hand after deducting taxes, of course. Then they'll say, I'll give you 4 lakhs as joining bonus. So now you are up to 24. Now the remaining 16 lakh is going to be your vestable stocks. So they'll say, that these 16 lakhs I'm going to give you over 4 years. So in the first year, the breakups could be different, but let's say in the first year, they'll give you 25%. That means additional 4 lakhs. In the second year, when you complete the tenure in second year, at the end of second year, you'll get another 4 lakh of RSUs vested. So you'll get another 4 lakhs. So essentially, in the first year, all you get is 28 lakhs. It's not 40 lakhs. And a lot of companies do this, and I've seen students which are very smart, who have done their market research, but when it comes to CTC, they are just clueless. They just assume they are going to get it divided by 12. That's not how it works. It's very important to keep an eye on your CTC, what the HR is offering you, and negotiate. I know when you are a fresher, it's difficult to negotiate. Companies don't really entertain that, but if you could, you should.
That actually helps a lot of people, because since you're talking 40 lakhs, that's a huge amount. 28 lakhs still is a huge amount. But when the CD is like 6 to 7 lakhs, then it's quite depressing what comes to in the bank account at the end of the month. But yeah, after all this we have discussed till now, at this point, I guess, was what happens after the preparation, right? So my question to you now is, what goes behind the preparation? Because you said a couple of semesters you have no idea what's going on in coding. The initial semesters, and the end semesters you're practically applying and like just blindly applying to companies, sending a resume. You get less or no time for preparation. What you have left with you is 4 semesters, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. In engineering, I'm talking about. So what should be an ideal preparation strategy, considering that companies do not come to your college? You have like different options in mind, like MBA, MTech. You have different options in mind because you're not completely sure, because you just started coding. You have options in mind. What should be the ideal preparation and overall holistic strategy to end up with a good and secure lifestyle, I guess? Like actually do what you want to do at the end of your 4th year, not messed up and not clueless about things. Like the CTC is okay, but not in general in life you shouldn't be clueless. So I guess since you're very experienced with that, I want you to give us a brief strategy regarding this. That's my question. Over to you.
Yeah. So one of the things to understand very clearly is what you really want to do. See, a lot of students, when they end up in a college, when they start studying engineering, in 2 to 3 semesters, they realize they are not meant for this. And now they are kind of stuck, they are trapped. They don't know what to do. Now, as you mentioned, they have 2 options. Primarily, either they can go for masters in computer science, which would be a very bad choice, because if you suck at coding, you don't like computer science, just having a master's degree is not going to help you a lot. The second is MBA. Again, MBA is a hype. The reason I say it's hype is because most of the people who want to pursue MBA, they don't really know what is being taught in MBA. What is the specialization they want to do? How are they going to make an impact in the business? What are they going to learn and what are they going to deliver? They have no clue about this. I have met people who are experienced, forget about students, who say they want to pursue MBA, but they have no clue what they want to do specialization. They have no clue how it is going to help their career. My suggestion would be talk to your counselor. Every university has a dedicated set of faculties. You can go and you can talk to them, you can explain your dilemma to them, and they will guide you. The quality might not be very good, but it's always helpful to, if you talk to a counselor. If you think you are still not convinced, talk to a counselor outside your university. You will have to pay them, but it's going to be very, helpful for you, because now you would know what are the options you have, and you can make an informed choice. Coming back to if you want to continue doing what you are doing, if you like computer science, if you like software engineering, and you want to make a career in it, these 4 semesters that you mentioned, there are 2 things that you must do. The first is you should build an expertise in one of the languages. I know a lot of people would say, okay, you have to be a polyglot programmer, you don't have to learn a language, things are changing very fast. That's all good. But you have to be expert in one language, because when the interviewer is going to ask you to write a question, you have to solve a problem, you have to code it in a language, right? And unless you know how, the power of that language, unless you can utilize it, unless you can leverage it, it's useless to know X languages. If you can't code in them, if you can just do a hello world, it's useless. So that's the first thing. The second thing is building projects.
Building project will come to that. I would like to mention a very small thing. I would like to ask you a very small thing at this point, because many people go with Python because they're interested in AI ML, the previous breed we discussed about. So they go with Python, and Python is not a object-oriented language. I guess it's not. So it has a lot of libraries, and it's very easy to code in Python. But in general, FAANG or maybe other companies do not allow coding in Python. So do you think so? What language should you do? So primarily.
About object-oriented paradigm, I don't want to talk about it because that's entirely a different thing to talk about. Even good faculties don't really have a clue what is object-oriented paradigm. People often confuse it with a language. A language and a paradigm are 2 entirely different things. They have some things to do with each other, but they are not the same. Second, yes, there are companies who might tell you that you are not supposed to code in Python. The reason is Python is a language which has abstracted so many complexities that anybody could code in Python without really knowing, the bits and the underlying complexity which is happening. So when companies say that you can't code in Python, what they mean is you have to manifest, you have to show your logical thinking ability, the data structure and algorithms, what you have learned. That's why they ask you not to use Python.
Sure. That helps. So you were telling about building projects. I would like to come back to that.
Yeah. So when you apply for a company, they have some certain set of metrics that they'll judge your resume on. So if you just give your, let's say, HackerRank or HackerEarth score, that is not sufficient enough, because we know for a fact that getting a high score in CodeChef or HackerEarth is not equivalent to you being a good developer. And anybody could fake it, right? You can just make one account, copy solutions from it, and you can get high scores. Don't do that. But I know people who are doing this because they just want to get shortlisted.
Yeah, sure.
So that is why they don't entirely consider these scores for shortlisting your resume. They'll also look at the projects that you have done. A lot of companies which are very specific to their domain or the kind of work they do, if they want to shortlist you, they look for the technologies that matches their stack. For example, let's say a company has all the stack in Python and all the projects that you have done is in C. They will prefer to recruit somebody who knows Python. because that gap, bridging gap, bootstrapping somebody to learn about Python, that is something they can just get rid of. If you already know Python, all you have to learn is about the projects. You don't have to learn, about the language itself. There are two kinds of projects that people usually do. The first kind of project is related to web development, and which I will recommend, because when you do web development, you get to learn a lot of things, from browser rendering of HTML, CSS, to writing code in Java, to interacting with the database. So this whole stack that you learn, it makes your profile very versatile. Now you know about databases, you know about programming backend languages, you also know about front-end design and HTML, CSS. So once you have done this kind of project, you can get a job in companies who do backend development, the companies who do web development, the companies who are solely focused on front-end development. So that opens a window for you. The second kind of project, which usually people do, is in their last year. It's about the research. It's mostly research projects. It's hardly web development or something. And this is the opportunity which I think people don't really utilize. This is a time where you can come up with very interesting and very, very specialized projects that can be, a window for you to enter companies which have these high bars of recruiting people. So my recommendation would be, do a web development project. Second, in your last year, do a research project which is very specialized in a particular domain, because that's going to be very helpful if you are sure that you want to enter this.
So I guess what you're trying to say is you have 4 semesters and it's very easy to do everything what you're doing and keep a project aside and dedicate half an hour and 1 hour to it every day for 1 semester, and you can end up building a good project. So in 4 semesters, we can have 4 good projects. That's what you're saying.
Not really. I'm not saying it's very easy. It depends on the quality of project, right?
No, it's developing. Okay. I'm talking about the time constraint.
Just a small. Yeah, see, managing time is the biggest challenge when you are in college, because you have a lot of things going on. You have your mid semesters, you have your quizzes, you have your assignments, then you have internal tests you have to prepare for, end terms. So yeah, there are a lot of things. I would say it's not easy, but it's not impossible. If you can't do 4 projects, you can definitely do 2 projects in 4 semesters. And that is something which I would highly recommend everybody should be doing.
I guess currently it's easy because we are not actually, nobody's doing online classes. People are most majorly studying on YouTube. And so I guess my personal experience is earlier people didn't got this opportunity, because at your time, like, you're not so old, you're just 2 years ahead of me. But the reason is YouTube has exploded in last 3 or 4 years. And the quality of content on YouTube in engineering domain, especially in computer science domain, you get everything on YouTube for free. So it's very easy to access in YouTube. And personally, I've studied for 2 semesters in offline mode. On 1 semester, I've completely dedicatedly studied on YouTube. And the quality of education I've received on YouTube for free is, I don't know, I don't know. I've studied from MIT professors. I've studied advanced algorithm from MIT professors. And that was a huge difference experience. Not like professor climbing, ascending the stage in our college lecture hall and showing us a bunch of PPTs. That's something to learn. So I guess currently it's much easier to devote more time apart from college to this coding environment and excel in it. So what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, so about the free courses and study material that's available online, yes, it has exploded. It has grown like 1000x or 10,000x, but it's not like it wasn't there 5 years back. It was there. In fact, NPTEL, which is a channel run by the IIT professors.
Yep.
I think IIT Kanpur runs it. It has a very good set of lectures in almost every course, I guess. Mechanical, electrical, computer science. It's a very interesting. It's in depth, and you get to learn about the things that you can't really learn in college. It has been already there. Second point, see, Kanishk, you might be a little different from your friends. I know there are hundreds of students who know about these things, but proactively they don't do that. They know there are courses available, but they will make a choice to rather go hang out at Connaught Place, eat momos, rather than studying in their house.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing.
So it's our choice, right? there are opportunities. If you want to seize them, you have to sacrifice. You have to trade off your time. A lot of people don't do that. It's okay. It's their choice. But you should not be regretting when at the end of fourth year you don't have a good job, you don't have a high-paying job, you don't have a vision. It's because the choices you have made.
Okay.
If you're doing that intentionally, you are supposed to be responsible for them.
Okay, so till now, I guess we had a very good and in-depth discussion. We covered all the topics. Now, before wrapping this and moving to the final section, I want to cover everything we have discussed so far. So, a guy enters in college. First year, he should figure out what he actually wants to do, and second year and third year, you said he should be mainly focusing on building a good rating in the DSA and HackerRank, HackerRank, and CodeChef, and building a couple of good and very good projects. And then finally he can apply for jobs. So that's the thing. Secondly, you're saying a simple trade-off you have to make and keep your academia high. So apart from this, anything else you should try doing in college? Because there's a mind. Apart from everything, you can study. You've studied all your life, and you'll keep on studying all your life. But there's a mindset in college, because what you mentioned, in my college, people are actually not doing that much, not putting in that much efforts. So why? There's a reason for that, I guess. Personally, I think there's a reason for that. They have this sort of regret that they didn't make, and they consider themselves as a moist tissue paper. Like, okay, I've tried, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. So that's I guess that's something. It's a mindset. I've seen same students, like students from IITs, did not study till 30th. They suddenly study and they get it. And they didn't do anything special. They just studied a couple of more hours in 11th class. That's it. So they don't have special aptitude and special minds. But in our college, people don't prefer studying because they are too depressed and broken. And I don't know. It's not just slacking, or it's not just excuses for a fact. It's just too much depression going on, and I can sense it in the air, because some people don't really care, but some really care, and they can't do this trade-off. So what do you have to say on this mindset? How to improve this?
Yeah, so see, a lot of people get depressed because maybe some of them are genuine. They might have put a lot of effort. They might have made some stupid mistake in the entrance examination. But for a lot of people, they just think, I think they just overestimate their potential. That's a fact. People won't like it when I say this. Parents don't like it when I talk to my cousins and juniors. It's a fact. Everybody is not equal, and people should accept it. You are, most of the students studying in a tier 3 college are not as smart as a student studying in IIT Kanpur. It's a fact. You should accept it. The second point is, it's okay. Everybody is not meant to be the same way. You are different. You are not. You might not be as smart in coding as somebody in a different section or a different college. It's all right. Now you are here. The question is, what to be done next? You can keep regretting that if you would have prepared well in class 11th or class 12th, you would have cracked IITs. If you keep doing that, after 4 years, you would be regretting that in my past 4 years, if I had put more effort in BTech, I would be at a better place. In next 7 years, you will be again regretting that if I would have put more effort in my job, I would have been in a better company. So this was a silsila regret ka. This is going to continue.
To it. That's a great perspective.
Stop doing that. Yeah, just stop doing that. See, even when I got into Sharda, I was amazed looking at all the infrastructure. It's so cool. Everybody talks in English. When you come from,
I don't think so.
Yeah, people don't, but people do speak English, right? And we have this inferiority complex that if somebody speaks in English, they are better than us. At least the people who come from, economically backward states like Bihar or Jharkhand. So that's the perception they have. And they think their life is all, it's gone. There's nothing to be done. But it's just a stepping stone. If you want to achieve things in life, you can still do it. So that get away from that state of depression. It's stupid, it's meaningless, and I know it's hard to get out from. See, you will, your mentality is going to be the same as the people who are surrounding you. If the people around you are always regretting, ki, Arey, ye kar lete, we would have gotten into NITs or IITs, you will think the same. To break away from it is the biggest challenge, and you can definitely do it. I did it. I never wanted to get into IITs, never prepared for it, but I wanted to get into a better college. I thought Sharda wasn't a good college, but still I made good progress. I am at a good place, better than what I would have imagined few years back. So it's all up to you. If you put effort,
Yeah, his story is
you
connecting the
can
dog
absolutely
backwards, right?
succeed.
Steve Jobs says his story is connecting the dog backwards. So yeah, that's the thing. I guess that's pretty much it. Now we have a special segment. This final segment I usually end the interviews with. That's a rapid fire. So I wanted to. That's not a rapid fire, just simple useless questions. So the first is, what's your favorite fan company? You cannot say Amazon.
I would say Facebook is something is a company that really fascinates me, especially what they have done in the domains of anthropology and social networking and different stuff.
Okay.
Amazon was definitely my choice. That's why I am here.
Yeah, sure.
I applied for this company. It's doing a lot of great things in terms of cloud computing and all. So yeah,
Okay.
apart from Amazon, I would say Facebook is something I really admire.
Okay, second question. What is the easier way to get into FANG? FANG or maybe any good job paying more than 15 lakhs CTC. What is the easier way? Applying seriously applying off campus or going for an MTech from an IIT? I'm going for an MS
Off
for that
campus.
fact. Off campus.
Off-
Okay.
Definitely off campus.
Third question. How do you think how good is White Hat Union?
I don't know. I won't say it's good at all. Maybe this video will be pulled down because I'm saying this. But yeah, it's not good. They are just making money out of insecurities of parents. I don't think it's a good strategy. I don't recommend any parent watching this to enroll their child in these kind of courses. It's useless.
No, definitely no one is gonna watch this video. So the second, okay, the last question is, okay, I had this question that how is the work culture in FANG? People usually say we have there's a mixed bag of opinions. It's like we don't have a work-life balance. It's very hectic. Second is we enjoy our work, and third is I want to get out of here as soon as possible. So how is the work culture and how does it function in FANG or maybe any good company?
So yeah, I can speak about Amazon. I heard the culture of Google is something that everybody really admires. I know a couple of people who work at Google and they always speak good things about it. I mean, I enjoy working for Amazon. Jeff Bezos has said this one time when he was asked about work-life balance. He said he doesn't believe, and Amazon doesn't believe in work-life balance. They believe in work-life harmony, which is different. If you are really passionate about something, if you want to pursue about something, there should be nothing that should stop you from doing that at your job. You should have that confidence and a free hand to work towards it, and at the same time it should not be hampering your life. So you should be going to that sweet spot where there is a harmony. You are good with what you're doing at work and you love your life.
Sure, that helps. So yeah, we'll wrap this up completely. If you have anything else to add to this, so you want to any message for our viewers, like who our viewers are mostly 90% of them are students in second year, third year, who are actually figuring what to do in life. So you have anything specific to say to them?
Yeah, what I will say is if you think that it is not something meant for you, but you still want to get that degree, get it. But on the same hand, realize what is good for you, what you are good at. I know a lot of folks in my batch who are running companies who suck at coding, who actually never did any coding, but they have turnover of lakhs of rupees. There are a few of the people that I know who don't know anything technical, but they are successfully running, event management businesses, and they are making a lot of money. Just think about it, think what you're good at, and get involved in that. There are many opportunities. It's never end of the world. You can do it. Just do what you love. It's easy to say, but it is also possible.
Yeah. Another fact is, strangely enough, coincidentally enough, apart from Facebook, nobody else who found a good company actually knew how to code. So neither the Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, nobody knew any ideas. If Steve Jobs wasn't friend with Steve Wozniak, there would be no Apple. So I guess that's what I guess, and that's what I think. Now we'll wrap this interview. And how was the experience in this podcast? And please share with us.
Yeah, it's really good, Kanish. I think what you're doing is going to be really helpful to a lot of people. The videos I've seen on the YouTube of the similar format, what I've seen is people who are working now do these podcasts. So they are not really able to connect to the students. A student in third year, fourth year might not be able to connect with somebody like me if I do this podcast. What you're doing is very, very good. You might be getting less views, but the people who are viewing this is good. They're going to get benefit.
Yeah, it's a legitimate audience.
Yeah, it's a legitimate audience. It's not a clickbait. It's not Badshah's videos and right?
Now,
No fake audience.
fan people can be funny too. That's a catch. I'll just comment in whatever your question is on YouTube. So we'll keep on checking the comment section. If there is any specific question, we'll definitely answer. Oh, that's it. We'll wrap the interview for now. Thanks. So please say the drill. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Nobody actually does it, but just you have to say it in the future.
Yeah. I think if you are in a tier 3 college, you must subscribe to this channel. I'm pretty sure Kanishk is going to come up with, different dynamics of people. You'll get different perspective. So please subscribe, like this. If you like it, share it. I am pretty sure you must be knowing your friends or some cousin or somebody who's going to get benefit out of it. It doesn't harm to share. Send it on your family WhatsApp group. It's going to be very beneficial even for the parents.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks for bearing with us. Thank you. We'll wrap up. Okay, back up.
I asked the boss if he pay me on time. He just said, "You go get yours, I'll go get mine." Oh, no one told me